The BMW iX1 is among one of my favourite all-electric SUVs, and the iX3 is not too bad either. So when I saw the iX2 announced with its controversial design, I was genuinely curious to see how to compare with its siblings. Now at the time of filming and in the UK, it's available in two trim configurations. You have got the eDrive 20 with a front-wheel drive configuration that starts from roughly £51,500, and then you have got the xDrive 30 with an all-wheel drive configuration, which we have on review, that starts from roughly £57,500, of course without adding any additional options. Now in this review you can see if they're actually worth their price tags and how they compare with some of their key competitors. And before proceeding with this video, I would just like to thank AntCharge for actually sponsoring it. More on them a little bit later. So to kick things off, let's talk about performance. And yes, indeed, you've got two trim levels to choose from. Here you have got the eDrive 20, which has got a front-mounted motor that dispatches all the power to the front wheels only. Indeed, it's a front-wheel drive vehicle. Here you've got 150 kilowatts of power or 204 horsepower and 250 newton meters of torque. It'll go from 0 to 62 miles an hour in a claimed 8.6 seconds. Now the xDrive 30 model, which is on review, has got two electric motors, one at the front and one at the rear, and these combine to output 230 kilowatts of power or 313 horsepower and give you a whopping 494 newton meters of torque. It's claimed to go from 0 to 62 miles an hour in 5.6 seconds. Now using RaceLogic's Performance Box Touch, I actually had the xDrive 30 model tested from 0 to 20 miles an hour in 1.39 seconds, 0 to 30 miles an hour in 2.11 seconds, 0 to 60 miles an hour in 5.04 seconds, yes indeed faster than the manufacturers claim, and from 50 to 70 miles an hour in 2.69 seconds with a peak acceleration of 0.66 Gs. Now it's worth considering that these figures were attained in launch control mode, which is very simple to initiate as you just have to put your foot down on the brake pedal and then the accelerator pedal, wait for the launch control to be active and you'll get a notification via the instrument cluster and even get some rumbling around the cabin, and then you simply have to just lift off the brake pedal. Now I noticed that even with boost control on, the times didn't actually really change. Now yes indeed you have got a boost mode that you can enable at any point. It's a small little flappy pedal that's found behind the steering wheel. Now boost mode will give you a 10-second boost of performance and effectively gives you the full whack of power at any given point, no matter if you're in sport mode or for example on one of the more economical modes. So it's worth considering that boost mode can be quite handy, specifically if you're going to be doing an overtake maneuver, for example on the country roads or of course on the motorway. Speaking of which, if you're going to be taking the iX2 on unrestricted roads, you might be a little bit disappointed to know that the eDrive 20 is limited to 106 miles an hour, while the xDrive 30 will get up to 112 miles an hour. Of course, this should certainly suffice for most consumers, but for those people who are going to be frequenting the Autobahn, it might come as a little bit of a disappointment. So while the iX2 is certainly very fast in a straight line, it hasn't got exactly class-leading figures, at least in comparison to some of the other all-wheel drive alternatives out there on the market. With that said, I suspect most people looking at a BMW will be more concerned about how it handles around certain winding roads. And in this respect, the vehicle actually does perform very well. It doesn't suffer from too much body roll, and of course it is still present due to its overall form factor and size, and it has also got fantastic grip, specifically on the xDrive 30 model due to its operating on an all-wheel drive configuration, therefore giving you plenty of confidence if you're going to be cornering at speed. Now where it does fall short however is in terms of the overall driver's input, which is something that is quite surprising, because the iX1 and iX3 are class leading in this department. Indeed over here the iX2 has got a slightly disjointed steering input, even in terms of its sport mode preset. Don't get me wrong, it's far superior in comparison to the vast majority of its competitors, but when compared to its siblings, it's not exactly the best. You'll feel a little bit of a disjointed feel with the front axle, at least if you're going to be chucking around winding country routes. Now if you're not and you're going to be just pottering around town, you'll be pleased to know that the adaptive M suspension is a work of art. It will soak up a lot of the potholes, the anomalies and the speed bumps, while also giving you a fantastic experience when you're going around those challenging routes at speed. Therefore means that you have got the best of both worlds. It is of course worth bearing in mind over here that if you really do want to be gliding over some of the speed bumps or the potholes when you're pottering around town, you might want to look into something that's a little less sporty and therefore look at the likes of the Citroen or indeed Audi alternatives. So while the BMW iX2 is actually pretty fun and engaging to drive, what about when it comes to the all-important electric range? Well, here at the time of filming and in the UK and across all the models, you have got a 64.8 kilowatt hour battery pack, and you've also got a heat pump that comes included as standard, which is certainly appreciated for those colder climate days. And the manufacturer claims that you'll get roughly 270 to 280 miles via the eDrive 20 because of its single motor design, while the dual motor xDrive 30, which we have on review, sits at roughly 250 to 260 miles, again via the official claims. Now, from my own mixed driving test on the xDrive 30, I netted between 205 to 225 miles, which is neither the best nor is it the worst sort of figure. Indeed, as you'll be able to see over here via the mileage leaderboard, it doesn't exactly fare all that well in comparison to some of its modern competitors, but is a step up over some of the alternatives out there on the market. It's a shame, however, it doesn't quite reach the height of the smaller BMW iX1. Ultimately, I was actually expecting a little bit better range from the manufacturer, but alas, that wasn't quite the case. Now, for you to be as efficient as possible and to recoup energy back into the battery pack, you'll want to enable regenerative braking. Now, here I'm in B mode and I'm rolling at 30 miles an hour. And if I were to lift off the accelerator pedal, the vehicle will decelerate pretty harshly and also come to a complete standstill, which is very much appreciated. So yes, indeed, you have got a full one pedal drive on the BMW iX2, as you would come to expect, because it's very much present on some of the alternatives from the BMW group. Now, of course, you do also have the ability of plugging it in, and here via CCS port it will take up to 130 kilowatts of input, therefore allowing you to go from 10 to 80% in just 29 minutes. Now, if you are going to be plugging into a wall box, you will be pleased to know that there is an 11 kilowatt onboard charger that comes fitted as standard across the entire trim range. This means that you can go from 0 to 100% via its Type 2 port in 6.5 hours. In fact, this time can be brought down to 3 hours and 45 minutes if you were to upgrade to the 22 kilowatt onboard charger, which will set you back £880. Now, should you not have access to a 3-phase power supply, a regular 7 kilowatt wall box will take you roughly 10.5 hours to go from 0 to 100%, while a 3-pin input will take you over 33 hours. Speaking about charging, this perfectly brings me on to today's sponsor, AndCharge, a free app that enables you to share your charging experience and even regularly rewards you. AndCharge is the most trusted platform for rating public chargers. By contributing to the app, you'll be helping others find the best charge points and also actively improving the charging infrastructure by providing key information to operators such as BP Pulse and Source London, among many others. Better still, the app is fun to use as you can compete with others by earning points. All that's required is to sign up using an email, so all your data also remains anonymous. If you download the AndCharge app using the link found in the description below or the pinned comments, you'll even get some starting credit. So aside from how it's on the road, what about when it comes to be sat within the cabin? Well, first off, the overall cabin noise has actually been suppressed and therefore means that you do actually get a pretty serene in-cabin experience. Although it's worth bearing in mind that this press vehicle has got the acoustic glass option that comes fitted, and that is indeed part of one of the tech packs, so something worth considering. Now, in terms of the overall interior design, I've got no real complaints. Of course, you can customize the color and certain parts of the trim, but in terms of the overall look and feel, it certainly does feel premium, at least if you compare it with some of the cheaper alternatives out there. I also love the fact that BMW has retained physical controls on the steering wheel and towards the center console. It makes it all that bit more intuitive to use when you come to getting into the iX2. Although it's a shame that you have not got any more dedicated climate controls, as you'd find on some older vehicles out there on the market, or indeed some of its competitors. On the flip side, however, you have got a super responsive 10.7-inch infotainment system, which is a little bit convoluted and can be a little bit hard to grasp, but once you get your head around it, it does become second nature. Furthermore, it's fantastic to see that you have got Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, which are supported over a wired and wireless connection. Better still, these third-party mobile operating systems feed through data to the instrument cluster, which sits at 10.25 inch. It's fully digitalized and can be customized to a certain degree. It's great to see that BMW has looked to address this, because some of its competitors do not offer said functionality. Now, if you do want to further expand the use of technology within the cabin, you might want to go for the head-up display. Although it's a shame that this is locked within the Technology Plus pack, which will set you back a whopping £2,890. Nonetheless, if you do go for this package, you will find that the head-up display provides you all the key information that you require. For example, your traversing speed, the safety systems that are in operation, the media playback, and also that turn-based navigation data from Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, and indeed the built-in navigation system, all of which is very impressive. Now, speaking of your options, you might want to go for the 12-speaker 205-watt Harman Kardon audio upgrade, which I would actively recommend. This is what's actually fitted on this press vehicle, and it's actually pretty punchy. While it's not exactly class-leading in comparison to some of the alternatives out there, it is certainly a worthwhile upgrade for £660 over the stock 6-speaker system. If you want some more information about the audio system that is within the iX2, make sure you check out my detailed audio review that can be found up on your pop-up banner or by following the links down in the description below or in the pinned comments. Now, for you to play back your favourite tunes, you have got Bluetooth, wireless Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, or better still, you've got the ability of plugging in your smartphone. To achieve this and to get the best sort of audio fidelity, you'll want to use the two USB Type-C ports that are found towards the front of the centre console. These reside next to a 12-volt socket, which of course is used to provide charge, and the same could be said about the two USB Type-C ports towards the rear of the centre console. Now, this actually perfectly brings me onto storage within the iX2. Now, here you have got the glove box, which has been optimized for right-hand drive vehicles, and then you've got pretty large door bins both at the front and rear of the cabin. These will accommodate a 500ml bottle with ease alongside some small to medium-sized valuables. It is a shame, however, that the door bins have not been lined in any sort of fabric, and as such means that your loose keys or change will be heard rattling about when you're traversing uneven terrain, a slight oversight by the manufacturer. Now, aside from this, at the rear of the cabin, you'll find a pull-down armrest compartment, which reveals two cup holders, and you'll find a further two at the front of the cabin. Now, on that note, here you'll also find a smartphone holder, which also doubles up as a wireless charger. Although it's worth noting over here that if you do want a smartphone wireless charger, you'll have to splash out on a £1,680 pack, which I do find absolutely ridiculous, not only in this day and age, but also for a vehicle of this price point. It should be included as standard, but alas, it's not. Now, underneath the overarching center console, you'll find a non-slip area, which can suffice for a small to medium-sized purse or a larger size wallet. Now, as for the compartment that's found underneath this center armrest, it is actually very thin, and therefore will only suffice if you're taking, let's say, a set of keys. It also has not been optimized for right-hand drive vehicles, which is actually quite disappointing, as it means that accessing it as the driver is a little bit awkward. This is due to the positioning of the hinges opening away from the driver rather than towards. Of course, this might be a non-issue if you have a left-hand drive vehicle. So storage within the cabin isn't exactly the iX2's forte, so what about when it comes to its boot? Well, here thankfully it has been optimized. You've got 525 litres to play around with, or if you drop down the seats, a whopping 1,400 litres. It will suffice for your weekly shops, or indeed, of course, if you're going to be taking larger sized goods. Furthermore, it's great to say that the tailgate has got a hatchback design and it also is electric. In case you're wondering, for you to open it, you just have to use the badge. It does take a little bit of getting used to, but once you get your head around it, it does become second nature. It also has got a very practical design. You've got an underfloor compartment which can be useful for taking your charging cables. You then also have a flat loading bay with 40-20-40 rear split folding seats, therefore meaning you have got the ability of taking elongated goods and also not disturbing your rear occupants. It is worth noting, however, that despite being a fully electric vehicle, there is no frunk, in other words, an area at the front of the vehicle. But given the amount of storage you've got in the boot, it is not really something to overly complain about. However, what I do find unacceptable is the fact that the iX2 only comes with manually adjustable seats. Given the overall price point of the vehicle and given what else you can find out there, I do think BMW have somewhat shot themselves in the foot. Indeed, over here, if you want electronic controls for the driver, it'll set you back an additional £250. If you want the front two seats to be electronic with a driver memory function, you'll have to splash out an additional £750. And even if you want a heated steering wheel, you'll have to spend an additional £175. All of which I do think is quite ridiculous. Now, nonetheless, the front two seats as standard do come heated, although the rear seats are not heated, not as long as I could tell, be it included as standard or indeed available as an option. Now, the seats themselves are all actually very accommodating, although they're a little bit on the stiff side. Nonetheless, I didn't have any sort of lower back pain on longer journeys, and nor did any of my passengers complain either. Now, headroom and legroom at the front of the cabin, as you might expect, are a non-issue. However, at the rear, it's a little bit problematic. Due to the sloped roofline of the vehicle and also due to the positioning of the seats, it means that anyone who is an adult will be left a little bit hemmed in. Now, in my case, I'm just under 6 foot, and I did feel that legroom and headroom were both really limited, specifically towards the middle seat, where headroom was a particular issue. Of course, it might not be a problem if you only have kids or younger adults, but it's just worth pointing out that some of its competitors, including the siblings, the likes of the iX1 and the iX3, offer far better headroom and legroom at the rear of the cabin. Now, it's great to see that the manufacturer has optimized the rear footwell design, and while it's not completely flat, there's only a small little lip, so therefore you don't have a nonsensical transmission tunnel in a fully electric vehicle. Now, apart from all of this, I would just like to point out that if you do want a panoramic roof, you'll have to splash out an additional £1,100, which is not too much to ask, although it's worth pointing out that some of its competitors, for example the likes of the Tesla Model Y, have it included as standard. Moving swiftly on, we get on to one of the more controversial topics, and that is, of course, its exterior design. I'd be curious to know what you make of it down in the comment section below. Subjectively, I don't really like where the BMW group are going with some of their modern vehicles, including the likes of the iX2. Nonetheless, over here in person, it doesn't actually look as bad as it might seem online, although it does have certain things that stand out. For example, you've got that oversized kidney grille, and this is actually eliminated, at least if you go for the Technology Plus pack, which will set you back an additional £2,890. So I'm not sure how many people will actually go for that, of course, unless you go for that option anyway. Now, you have also got a somewhat robust look of the bonnet, and that is due to the somewhat flared profile. And then towards the side, you've got a relatively sporty look. Although here the wheels can divide opinion yet again due to them being a little bit convoluted. You've got 19 or 20-inch alloys to choose from. Now, as for the rear, I do think it's rather ugly. You have got this somewhat propped up look with these sort of plastic inserts, and then you have got this really weird looking spoiler. This is the M spoiler in case you're wondering, but I just don't really think it really suits with the overall design of the vehicle. It just looks a little bit off, and it's somewhat of a Batman looking vehicle, at least from the rear, but not in a good way. Now again, it is of course all subjective, but in this respect I do think that BMW didn't really think about the design and the philosophy of the vehicle, but rather kind of stitched up different bits and tried to make it look pretty aggressive and sporty, specifically given the fact it is being labelled as an SAV, in other words a sports activity vehicle, rather than an SUV. Now, in terms of the colour options, you've got a few to choose from, which range from an additional £595 to £2,100 if you want one of the individual paints, and it does come as standard in Arctic White. In terms of your towing capacity, it is rated at 750 kilograms for brake trailers on the eDrive 20, while this moves up to 1,200 kilograms on the xDrive 30. Next up, we get on to safety, and here the vehicle has not been currently tested by Euro NCAP, so I can't give you any sort of crash analysis, but what I can talk about are the driver assistance systems. Now here as standard, you've got cruise control with speed limiter, lane departure warning, which is actually rather annoying because if you do want to disable it, you'll have to faff around with the infotainment system every single time you power on the vehicle, and then you have got speed warning, which actually thankfully can be disabled by long pressing the set button that is found on the steering wheel. This is going to be enabled every single time you step inside the vehicle and can be sometimes a little bit off, specifically if you're going to be driving around the country roads. Then you've got attentive assistant, left turn warning, evasion assistant, and also front collision warning. Now, should you want to take things one step further, you want to go for the driver assistant package, which will set you back £540. This gives you lane change warning, rear cross traffic alert, exit warning, and rear collision prevention. Moving up from that, you've got the Driver Assistant Plus package, which costs you £720 and adds active cruise control with stop and go technology, steering and lane central assistant, speed limit info, and automatic speed limit assist. If you want the whole shebang, which will set you back £1,650 within the Driving Assistant Professional package, you'll find steering and lane control assistant, approach control, lane keeping assistant with active side collision protection, front and rear cruising traffic warning, emergency stop assistant, and also road priority warning. Now, while I do appreciate that you've got plenty of options over here, it would have been great to see some of these features included as standard across the entire trim range. For example, the adaptive cruise control with stop-and-go technology, or even the likes of the steering and lane central assistant. Indeed, over here they're comprised within a pack, and therefore means that you just have to spend extra if you want some of these features that would otherwise be standard in some of the rival alternatives. Now, in terms of the overall parking and the visibility of this vehicle, it's not too bad. At least at the front, you've got a pretty wide opening, and the same could be said at the side, and it's actually very easy to maneuver due to its somewhat light steering wheel. Although it's worth noting that the rear view window is a little bit limited due to its somewhat propped up design, but thankfully over here you have got rear cameras that come fitted as standard, including some parking sensors. Now, should you want additional help, you'll want to go for the Technology Plus pack, which will set you back a whopping £2,890. This brings in parking assistance, high resolution 360-degree cameras, which gives you some peace of mind specifically when you're going to be parallel parking, automatic parking capabilities, and also drive recorder. Yet again, it's great to see these available, but it would have been great if some of these features were included as standard, given again the price point of the iX2. So in summary, what do we make of the BMW iX2? Well, it has got a pretty comfortable driving experience and also is relatively engaging to drive, albeit not exactly class leading. You've also got a good use of technology within the cabin, which has been optimized, a luxurious interior design, and plenty of space in terms of the boot. The problem, however, is due to its sloped roofline, you have got a limited amount of headroom and legroom when it comes to your rear occupants. The fact that you have to actually spend quite a bit extra if you want some standard features that you'd find on cheaper alternatives is quite disappointing. And also the fact is electric range doesn't exactly stand out, be it in terms of the other vehicles offered from BMW themselves, or of course some of the alternatives, some of which we would actively recommend and will be down in the description below for your own consideration. Now, we'd be curious to know what you make of the iX2 down in the comment section below, and of course if you would pick it over some of its rivals. Now, if you have enjoyed this detailed independent review, definitely do consider dropping a like, subscribing and hitting that bell notification, all of which would be greatly appreciated. As such, I've been Chris from TotallyEV, and I'll hopefully see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves, and goodbye.